Thank you very much. First of all, I want to take the opportunity to thank Walter and Aisha and Dylan and the crew that Deepthi mentioned. First of all, I want to thank Deepthi. Deepthi is the one who brought me to Sri Lanka Foundation, so I have a round of applause to Deepthi for bringing me to this amazing group of people, the Sri Lankan Foundation. I am so energized by you. And of course, it's my friend Keshini and Sharani and Achala and Chamod who fixes all our problems on our webinars, so I'm really grateful. So the bad thing about going as the last speaker is because everything you plan, somebody else has said it. So, I mean, even the jokes, some people have cracked it. So I'm in a really bad situation here, you know. So, but before I get further, let me recognize my wife, 𝐾𝐿𝐬𝐬𝐸. She's the one who she's the better half in every way. The looks, definitely. And of course, common sense most of the time. And I'm really delighted that I am with her and my kids, Sonali and Dinali. And my sister, who is here, Ira, who brought me up like my mother, and I love her as much as my mother and my niece and my friends, and of course Pepe and his son. So that's my family. I was supposed to say that, but everybody else has said that too. So let me give you a brief synopsis of how I became compassionate. I think it came from my Buddhist upbringing in Sri Lanka, and most of all, my family, my parents. I learned compassion very early. And I learned about impermanence of life because when I was 8, my older sister died of a C-section on the table. And I couldn't understand how, she was a physician herself, how a doctor could die at a C-section on the table. And then I realized what Buddha said, siludema anatyai, that means that everything is temporary. And as soon as we recovered, our family had another tragedy. My second sister, who was a physician, died of a brain tumor. Then I realized there was nothing called me. If I live for others, then I live happy. That started my journey of serving others. And this is what I teach my medical students. I teach my medical students that if you're going to be a doctor, you have to learn to live for others, not for yourself. Money will come and go. I really appreciate Walter and his family for what they have done with what they earn, because that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. So let me briefly tell you about my wife who have supported me and how things happen. I'll give you a little bit of tidbits of what I thought. I mean, we heard so much about science, but I want to teach you about the soul, And I think Yasanta was talking about the curiosity that brings up the best of people and, of course, perseverance. What Einstein said was it's imagination, almost the same thing that what he said. Imagination is far more important than intelligence. I mean, for example, Steve Jobs, or, all these guys who did tech, it's their imagination, because the technology was easy, but the imagination to put things together, connect the dots, that's what matters. So going back to my point, like my charity life, there are a couple of things that I want to share with you. One was my trip to Honduras. When Hurricane Mitch happened in Honduras, La Lima was devastated. 11,000 people had died. And the United States was pretty generous at that time. They gave us a whole plane load. We had the U.S. Southern Command in South Florida. And they said, okay, we'll give you a plane with all the medicines, go and do something. So I was the medical officer who went there. And I had never seen so much tragedy about people's houses completely devastated. I used to see 125 patients in a school, and some of them have never seen a physician, never. And the first time we were diagnosing diabetes. Fast forward to Haiti. I had planned to go to Vietnam with my family for a vacation, and the earthquake happens in Haiti, where 200,000 people died. And the University of Miami decided that we are going to put up a a field hospital at the Port-au-Prince airport. And I was, obviously, I'm the guy who volunteers first for these things. So the second week I was there. We were told, we'll give you a cot and water. The rest, you're on your own. You have to bring your own food if you're going to go there. So what we did was we took, I mean, I'm kind of stupid, I took power bars, I mean, how many power bars can you eat for a day? So I'd at least take some nuts, I forgot to take some nuts. So we go there, and I can tell you, I have seen unspeakable tragedies in Haiti. In the morning, I will look at the pediatric ward where there are about 30 to 40 kids with their hands cut off, legs cut off because crush injury to save their lives. There was one night in the middle of a storm. I was sleeping under a tent, and there was a thunderstorm, and the water is flowing under about 8 inches of water under my cot. And I'm wearing scrubs, and my shoes are floating, so I had to quickly grab my shoes and put them on the side of this thing. A mother is brought in labor in the middle of the storm, and I'm the chief medical officer, so I get called and I go and see. And I had an obstetric background because for some of you who know, I started as an obstetrician. So I looked at the mother, short, primey. I know she needs a C-section in the middle of Haiti with no power, nothing. How am I going to get a C-section done? And then the mother falls at my feet and tells me, "Can you save my child?" It reminded me of my sister who died. It was devastating to me. But I promised her I am not going to let her die. So I stood with her. We were waiting till the sun came up. But the worst part was, the tragedy is not the pregnant mother. The tragedy was that in this large tent, the tent was about this size, at about 1:30 in the morning, a child is brought, 14 years old, with tetanus, and she was having convulsions. I mean, they are spasms, not really seizures, but spasms, continuous spasms. And the anesthesiologist was trying to intubate and sort of, try to paralyze and try to control this. In the middle of this, she arrests, and she dies. And the scream of the mother, I would never forget the rest of my life. And in that hall, there were a lot of nurses and people, everything. Everybody was crying, including me. Everybody. Even the mother who brought the daughter in labor was crying. Not for her child, for the little child at 14 who died of tetanus, who should have never died. Should have never died. And those are the tragedies that you see. So these are the things I teach my medical students. If you want to go into this profession, this is who you want to be. And I always say that I'd much rather have a Mother Teresa than an Einstein by my bedside. You may not be able to cure every disease, but you can relieve suffering. All you have to do is to hold a hand and say, "Don't worry, I will do whatever I can take to make yours better." So ladies and gentlemen, this is nothing high-tech. This is very simple. This is how you do community service and caring for sick with your heart, with a little bit of brain. And I want to thank Walter and Dijan and the Sri Lanka Foundation, with all my colleagues who have done so much with what they have. And we have so much to do for Sri Lanka and the rest of the world. As you see, all of us have a little bit of Sri Lanka in you. Anything bad happens in Sri Lanka, something little dies inside you. And we have to remember that. And thank you.